welcome to Philly Teen Talks. My name is Zora Ball, and I go to Philadelphia Performing Arts High School. We will now introduce our other panelists.
Hi, I'm David Kawasi. I'm 17 and I go to Carver High School.
Hello, my name is Nasim Jones. I'm 20 years old and I'm planning on going to CCP for my psychology major.
Great. Now that we've gotten to know each other, we can begin our discussion on mental health within the Black community. We will also be talking about the increased suicide rates and Philadelphia crime. While doing research, I found that according to the Philadelphia Inquirer, suicide deaths dropped 5.6% in the last year, but there hasn't been a drop for all groups. In fact, a recent study from the preliminary studies of communities in Illinois, Connecticut, and Maryland have found a rise in suicides among Black Americans and other people of color. In fact, a recent study from the JAMA Network shows that African American boys between the ages of 5 and 12 are more likely to die by suicide than any other age group. And nationwide, suicides among Black children under 18 are up 71% within the last decade. So, as Black youth, how do you guys feel like we can normalize the conversation about mental health and our emotions in our communities?
Well, me personally, I think what you said, normalized conversation. I don't think there is a conversation yet about it. So I researched it and it said that 13.4% of the US population identifies as Black or African American. And of that, 16% have reported having mental illness in the past year. And of that, 20% said that they didn't take any action when they figured it out. And so that's over 7 million people who didn't take action when they realized that they had mental illness. And a big part of that is because a lot of people still feel like if you seek help or if you like try to talk about your feelings, then that's like showing that you have weakness. And I think the main thing that we have to do is show that not only is it not weak to talk about your feelings, but it also will make you stronger in the long run.
So I think we just need to talk to our family, especially our parents as well. And like what David said, there's a stigma around, you know, talking, revealing your feelings, telling someone how you feel may show that you're weak. And I think if you have that parent that tells you it's okay to feel that, we'll need to take that leap of faith. And with that parents telling us that, just open up to people more.
Yeah, I'd like to add on that, like talking to your family or friends, like you can also start small as well. Like I know a lot of people like are worried about people knowing their business and like me being one of those people, like I don't really want people to know like everything that's going on, but you can start small and then you can gradually lead your way up to bigger conversations. And I think that's really how the conversation can be normalized if you start off small, because then you become more comfortable with the person you're talking to. And also for people that don't have someone to talk to, you can write your feelings down so that you can get it out in some way. And then in the future, you'll be able to see it and see how far you've come. Does
Yeah,
anyone else have something to add?
honestly, I think that another thing that what Nasim said, finding someone to talk to, I think that a lot of people think that they can't, and I don't even think that this is just um in the African American community. I think it's everyone that they can't talk to their parents about how they feel, but I feel like talking your parents are one of your like one of the best people you can talk to because they also know you the most. They know like the things you've been through. So I think that talking to them is a big thing that you can do if you feel like you need help.
Yeah, I was I was a victim of this once when I was in like around high school. I went through a lot in my, I want to say 11th grade year. And I really think if I told everyone how I felt, or I'm like, hey, I'm really depressed, like I would be attention seeking and I really would be putting my stress on someone else. So I kept that a secret until it became too much and I really needed someone to talk to. So because I was told in psychology class everyone faces depression eventually in their life. So that's a good thing to know because we all suffer eventually. Well, that's a terrible thing to say, but we all have the same problem sometimes. And even though we think we don't, I think it's always the best thing to just like at least talk to someone about it. Or like with Zora says, if you still don't feel comfortable talking to someone, at least write it in a note, at least write it down somewhere.
Yeah, I was going to add and say, like talking to your parents, you may be able to connect with them on a different level because they have gone through and like may have had similar experience to you. So like knowing that you guys share like similar experiences may potentially bring you guys closer. And the next thing that I wanted to talk about was Philly crime because I lived in Philly my whole life, but like for the most part, I felt pretty safe in my community, but I know that hasn't been the case for everyone. And as stated on a CBS 3 article, Philadelphia now has the highest murder rate in the country per capita of the country's 10 largest cities. So how do you guys feel that the community and maybe like even yourself can help with this problem?
Um, Honestly, I think that the main problem, and this is just my opinion, I think that the main problem is gentrification in Philly. So the definition of gentrification is the process whereby the character of poor urban area is changed by wealthier people moving in, improving housing and attracting new businesses. Now, even though that sounds nice, the thing that you don't really think about is the people who are being moved out, and that's really what our community is now. So I think that because there's so much gentrification in Philadelphia and everyone knows about it, like it's not a hidden thing, because there's so much gentrification in Philadelphia, so many more people in lower income communities have to do more to get the money that they need to keep living in the places that they live. And so even if someone's working like three jobs, they still have to like have that extra money, and the way they get it is through crime. So yeah.
Like going with the gentrification thing, we just need to lend a helping hand to, at least a neighbor or someone we know. If we know someone is suffering or like our friends or close people, at least lend a helping hand out. Because it could also be, going back to what we said again, people don't know how to actually talk to other people, or they just bottle it down inside. It's going to be like a dam that's going to eventually blow, and they're going to start doing crimes, and they don't know how to actually control that emotion. Also, asking out for help or just reaching out to anyone who just needs help.
Did you guys have anything else to add before we wrap up?
Nope.
No, nothing comes to mind.
Well, thank you guys for your input on these topics. You guys gave great answers. And I'd now like to introduce our guest speaker, Saul McDaniel, who is a licensed social worker and a master of social work. And I'd also like to introduce Keish Datz, who is a fellow intern with the WHYY Career Pathways Program. Welcome, Keish, and thank you for agreeing to do an interview with us on the topic of mental health. How are you doing today?
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I love this topic. As I was looking through the questions, I'm feeling pretty good. I can't complain.
Cool. Well, Keish, I'd like to start off by asking you my first question, and that would be, what is something that kept you motivated during the pandemic?
There was a lot actually happening during the pandemic, like the Black Lives Matter, like George Floyd, and like the Walter Wallace situation. So there was like I feel like there was like a contrast between like the pandemic and like stuff really happening. So it was like I didn't even know what to focus on. I guess like what keeps me motivated in general would probably be the idea that like whenever we lost so many people during this pandemic, like personally, as a Black person, like it's just like it feels like we keep losing. But I feel like I live by like the idea that like every time I breathe, I'm breathing in for somebody else, and every time I breathe out, I'm supposed to be given to like a bigger movement. So I feel like ultimately, Black women keeps me motivated. Black people, and I think knowing that there's like a bigger like I guess like war. I don't want to say war because it's like a like traumatizing language, but I feel like what keeps me motivated is just knowing that it's like I'm fighting for other people. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely with the pandemic, there was a lot of contrast between Black Lives Matter and also like the actual pandemic itself. And like personally, I was struggling with worrying about the pandemic and also the Black Lives Matter movement. And it was kind of overwhelming. So like I agree with you that it was a lot to take in. When we can go into the next person's questions.
So I had a follow-up question from Zora's first question, which was, who do you think helped you through the pandemic?
I feel like I feel like Philly, and just like everywhere, like that I'm starting to see that we have like a lot of good like mutual aid groups. And I've been like blessed to be a part of a lot of different organizations that are mutual aid groups. So like that's the Philadelphia Student Union. We had Youth Set the Stage, which is like a broader range. Dora was on it, of like different organizations that give to youth. And so like I would say like definitely mutual aid groups. Yeah, definitely mutual aid groups in Philly. Whether that's like food, like going to like different churches that give out boxes for food, or like I don't really know what that program is called. It might be Philadelphia, or whether it's um like education, like educating myself on like my queerness, which is like the attic, or like learning from different mentors or like people or just peers, like you said the stage. So I feel like it was like definitely organizations that helped me a lot.
And going back to what you were talking about meditation, how do you feel about like yourself going to therapy or like Black people like going to therapy?
Mm, that's interesting. I used to like believe like, cause therapy, like I don't want to say something that's controversial, but like I used to think like therapy is like I feel like there's a lot of goods and bads with therapy. And then I didn't have a therapy. I didn't have a therapist like grown up until I was in, I think, the 11th grade. I used to look at therapists almost like the cops, and I somewhat still do, because like it's like if you tell them something, they do have the right to like tell the police. I forgot what their like mandated reporters, and so I feel like that part was a little tricky for me. But I think that I've been really numb to a lot of different things, and so I honestly don't know how I feel. I wish I had a therapist, but I don't have like the correct insurance, or because I was in foster care, and so I ended up aging out. I was adopted, so I aged out, and like I still have to figure out like the insurance part, so it wasn't like easily accessible to me, I guess. Yeah.
So, since you can't go to therapy, do you have like any other ways of, you know, talking to someone or getting your all your emotions out?
I feel like I used to try to like talk to friends, but then you get to a point where it's like you don't want to like dump everything that's on them, and so I had to like really start being more aware that I was doing that. I guess like the way that I do it would more so be like listening to podcasts and like YouTube. But honestly, I think I feel like I put all my energy into like the stuff that like I make or something. But yeah.
We were talking about that yesterday about how people may not have access to therapy, but you can also talk to like maybe a family or family member or a friend, but also like writing it down may help you as well so you can get it out. Like maybe not telling someone, but writing it down may help you so you can like get it out of your system. And that, does anyone else have anything else to add?
No.
You're muted.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Keish, for your input. Like that, we're very appreciative of you giving your time and your words to us and adding to our discussion overall. And just thank you for coming and have a good day. Do you have anything else you wanted to say before you left?
Yeah, I guess I would just say thank y'all. I really love the questions. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for like doing this in this topic. I really appreciate it.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
I'd now like to introduce our second guest, Saul McDaniels, who is a licensed social worker, an expert on the topic of mental health, and currently a counselor at the University of Pennsylvania. So, without further ado, we can begin our interview with Saul. So I saw that you're a psychotherapist at the Therapy Center in Philadelphia in 2018, and that goes into my first question which is, what are some common misconceptions you feel that people have about therapy?
Yeah. Well, there are definitely a lot. So one of the first ones that I wanted to highlight is that a lot of people think that if you go to therapy, that means that you're weak, and that's not what it means at all. It takes a lot of mental strength to be able to decide to go to therapy. And Another idea is that when you get to that point where you decide you're going to go to therapy, that it means that you've hit rock bottom. That's not true. It means that you're willing to have that conversation with somebody. You're willing to open up yourself up, and that takes a lot of courage and a lot of strength. Another one is that it's similar to talking to a friend. It's not similar to talking to a friend. You're definitely meant to have that same comfort and, like feel good during those conversations at times, but therapy is solely focused on you and your thoughts and your feelings. And therapists don't use our own judgments. We don't share our opinions. So it's solely about you and everything that you're thinking and everything you're going through. Another thing is that people think that we can like wave our wands and fix everything. That would be totally nice. The world would be so different if we could just do that, but it's not true. And you're gonna need, depending on what situation you're going through, you're gonna need a few sessions to be able to talk that through with someone. And I think the last one that I wanna highlight is that a lot of people think that you don't have to do work outside of therapy, and that's also not true at all. You have to continue working on yourself, build your self-care, keep talking to your friends, building your community, and because your therapist only sees you that 1 hour throughout the week. So all the other times that you're by yourself and you're going through things, it's important to like try to keep having a optimistic outlook, trying to keep setting those boundaries with your friends and your family, and just continuing to try to build yourself up outside of therapy.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for sharing that. Like you have to keep building your skills so outside of therapy so you can stay consistent and like potentially like change your mindset to become healthier.
Yeah.
And another thing that I would like to add was that I saw that you're also a POC counselor at Project Let's, and like you help them with coping mechanisms and how to keep calm as well. So I wanted to ask you what do you have any advice to help young people identify the type of help that they need?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So one of the things that I would think about is like telling you to think about different aspects of your life that you might be struggling in. So if that's like you're having anxiety or having depression, you might be struggling with some disordered eating, maybe some PTSD. Thinking about things that you want to improve on, things that are interfering with your life that you would like to be going more smoothly. If there are social issues that are important to you, or you have like identities that are close to you that you would like to process with a therapist, it's also great to find a therapist that has those same identities, because I think it makes a huge difference having a therapist. For me, being a Black therapist and having my own Black therapist, I know what it's like to have somebody be able to validate me in that way, and it's really everything. So like thinking about what type of therapist will be good for you. You're not going to find the right therapist the first time that you try. So I think it's good for people to like shop around sort of and find therapists. So you might have a therapy session with someone, you might say, they're not a good fit, try someone else. That's totally fine. It's the more connected that you feel with your therapist, the more likely you are to want to continue going. So that's a huge thing. I would also say looking into different kinds of therapy. And finding out what works best for you. And another huge thing, because money is always an issue, you have to see what your insurance would cover. So a lot of people don't know that it's this simple, but if you just call the number on the back of your insurance and you find out what they're willing to give you, they can also give you a list of people that fit some of the specific criteria that you have. They'll tell you how many sessions you can get, and just trying to be like all around more informed about what you're walking into. I think that'll take some of the pressure off a lot of people.
Definitely, I can relate. Like having a therapist that looks like you can help you connect with them on a different level, and they can just relate to some of the things you may be talking to them about. And
Yeah.
now I can pass it on to someone else to ask their questions.
Okay.
Hello. Hey, yet again, thank you for taking the time to be with us. It's an honor. and I noticed that she was a director of mental health programming for a year and 5 months at Indy Soglo. And he was also a counselor for the University of Pennsylvania from like currently 2019 to currently. And I just wanted to ask, what do you think is the leading cause of depression during the pandemic?
During the pandemic. Well, I think one thing is definitely there's a lot more isolation. So even with myself being a therapist, we are used to having people next door to us, going to the office and be like, let me just tell you what I just went through. I'm having a hard day. You know, you don't get that the same way you do when you're at home by yourself. So you're losing a lot of socialization. Um, so I would say another thing that goes with having depression, a lot of people overeat. And when you're at home, as you see, my refrigerator's right there. It's so much easier to have access to the things like your bad habits when you're at home and also trying to work. So I think the pandemic has made a lot more people feel a lot more depressed because a lot of things that we used to do, we don't have those same things anymore. So even just being outside, having that, being able to breathe is a luxury now that sometimes we don't have because we have to wear a mask. If you go running and that's part of your self-care, you can't necessarily do that the same way anymore. So a lot of things are different, and it's just trying to make sure that you have different ways to take care of yourself. But when you have depression, it's also very hard to create like a list of self-care things because it's harder to do things when you already feel bad, and when you already have a list that you had and everything changes because of the world, it gets harder.
I have another question for you. In our conversation earlier, we were speaking about the increased suicide rates of Black youth and also Philly crime. So I wanted to ask you, like, what is some advice or like tactics you think that the youth can do to help better their mental health?
Well, definitely practicing self-care, making sure that you're doing the basics at least. So making sure you're eating, you're showering, you're brushing your teeth, all of those different things. And then branching out from there, making sure you have your social connections. So going to see your friends a few times a week if you're able to, talking to your family. Um, just sort of trying to stay all around connected to yourself, getting to know yourself better. Um, and I know a big thing with young people is, being on the internet and social media. And so making sure that you don't let that become let that become all that's in your head. Because social media it's cool, but it's not necessarily always the real world.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think that especially during quarantine, it's gotten so much worse that so many people are like always on social media, and whatever they see, that's what they like believe.
Yeah.
And I think that's another big like cause of a lot of people's depressions.
I agree.
What would be your advice to like all the people who are like listening to this podcast or just the interview in general? What would you want to say to that person?
That you're not weak for wanting to do therapy. You're strong, you're important, um, your light deserves to shine. Um, Everything that you want for yourself, you are able to get it. And the way that you get that is by starting to work on yourself and by healing yourself first, because you it's very hard to be everything that you can be to other people without being that to yourself first. Um, yeah, just love yourself.
Well, thank you so much for coming and sharing your time and your knowledge with us. We're like very grateful to have your input on our conversation. Or is there anything else you wanted to say before we wrapped up?
Nothing that I can think of, but you guys are great interns. You're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you to the audience as well for listening to Philly Teen Talks.